Okay, could you introduce yourself a little?
Okay, so my name is Folashade Teriba. I was born here in New York, but I'm from Nigerian descent, and I am a freshman at Hampton University, physics major.
Oh, okay, interesting. And could you tell me something about Nigerian culture?
So Nigerian culture is very traditional, I would say. So there's a lot of religion-based traditions based with Nigerian culture. So like the main religions in Nigeria is either Christianity or Islam.
Mm-hmm.
And so mostly if you meet a Nigerian person, they're either Christian or Islam.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like a lot of the culture is based on that because like a lot of times there's intermixing between the culture and the religion, especially with like the language and the foods that we make and stuff like that, and the clothing that we wear. And with the language, from the tribe that I'm from, the language is Yoruba.
Mm-hmm.
But there's also different tribes that speak Igbo and Hassan, I think. And the foods are mainly the same for all of Nigeria. It doesn't matter the tribe,
Mm-hmm.
but it's mostly like stew-based foods, like things that you eat with like stew or like rice-based foods.
Sounds good. Is it spicy sometimes?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay, that's good. And yeah, I like spicy food too.
Yeah.
So do you go to Nigeria sometimes?
Yeah, I actually traveled with my dad to Nigeria every year
Mm-hmm.
before COVID. So the last time that I went was last summer.
Oh, okay. And when COVID happened, did it were you disappointed that you couldn't go, or
I was disappointed because I was really looking forward to going to Nigeria that summer, especially because the summer before that I didn't go.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was looking forward to it. So when COVID happened, I didn't get to, and I was kind of upset.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
because I didn't get to see my family and stuff like that.
Oh, okay. So how much of your family is in Nigeria and in the United States?
So all of my mom's side is still in Nigeria,
Mm-hmm.
but all of the siblings for my dad's side is either in the U.S. or the U.K.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
interesting. Okay, so do you ever go to the UK?
I've been to the U.K. once
Oh, okay.
or twice, and that was when I went to visit some of my dad's family members.
Oh, okay. And how did you like it there?
The UK is nice. I actually like the UK a lot.
Mm-hmm.
It's similar to the US, but it's definitely a different experience, I would say, especially
Mhm.
with the food and like even with like the roads are way smaller than here,
Mhm.
and like them driving on the other side,
Mhm.
like it's very interesting. I like the UK environment though.
You do?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I like it.
And where did you go to? Did you go to London or?
I did go to London.
Oh, okay. Did you understand all of the English?
Most of it. Some of it
Mhm.
was a little hard to
Mhm.
understand what they were talking about, but most of it I understood.
Oh, okay. And also in Nigeria, you said people speak Yoruba, but they also speak English as well. Is that correct?
Yeah, they do speak English there.
Yeah.
And they also speak Pidgin, which is kind of like a mix of English. It's like broken English.
Oh, okay. That's interesting. And where is your family from in Nigeria?
My mom is from Ijebu, and my dad is from Lagos.
Okay, and can you describe something about those places?
So Ijebu is kind of like, it's more like country-ish,
Mhm.
like dirt roads, stuff like
Mhm.
that. Like it's less privileged, I would say.
Mm.
But Lagos is like a city,
Mhm.
so like there's roads and like there's buildings and stuff like that.
Mm. Lagos is a big city, right?
Yeah,
Okay. How many people live in Lagos?
I'm not sure,
Not
but
sure,
it's a
but-
lot of people. But I'm not sure like the
Okay.
exact amount.
And can you talk about the geography a little in I know there's a coastline, right? And then there's what kind of are there woods and tropical forests?
It's like a mix of both. So like you'll mostly see like a lot of grassland,
Mm-hmm.
like a lot of grassland. There's a lot of grassland and stuff like that. Not a lot of trees, but a lot of just grass.
Okay.
And like it's either that or like desertish kind of, like just like a lot of sand areas.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So there are not really like any like almost tropical like forests
Not
or anything
really.
in the south or anything?
Not in the area that I'm
No.
into.
Oh, okay. And then what about like outside of the cities? What is life like outside of the cities versus like inside the cities?
Life outside the city is very like traditional and very like down to the basics, like because outside of the city there's not much light there. Like the light only comes on sometimes, so it's very much like hand washing clothes and like drying them outside and like it's hard to get water inside of the house, so there's like these big I can't remember what they're called, but like these big like gallons of water outside that you have to go and fetch water from to like shower and like use it to cook and stuff like that.
Oh, okay.
But if you compare it to like inside the city there's most likely going to be light more of the times, and you don't have to go fetch water. You can just get water from like the tap and stuff like that. So like it's definitely like more like advanced in the city compared to outside.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And how are African cities, like, or at least let's say Nigerian cities, like, how are they developing in the past, like, 10 years?
I feel like they're developing well. There is just a problem with like the government. Well, there's been a problem with the government in Nigeria for a while now, especially like with like corruption and stuff like that. And so like the development of the city is well, but it's not developing it to its full potential because of like the corruption and the money problem. Like the money isn't really put into like the area and stuff like that. So yeah.
It goes to the leaders and their families. Is that correct?
Yeah.
And does like Nigeria have like it has a democratically elected leader, but is it someone who has been in power for a long time, or?
They actually just elected a new leader.
Oh, okay.
I think it was this year or last year. And there was a lot of like tension with the old leader. Like the old leader, I know he wasn't really a good guy, and like the government was really corrupt. Like it's Nigeria is also like a very like military based area kind of. So there's always going to be like soldiers and stuff patrolling, and so like.
Does that make you feel safe, or how do you feel about it?
The soldiers aren't really in for your best interest, I would say. Like a lot of the times it's like they're in there for the money and stuff like that, and you can bribe them so that you can do certain stuff. So it doesn't really make me feel safe because like they're not there to protect, kind of like they're just there for the government and like to like constrict, I would say.
So you have to be kind of like a little afraid of them because you don't know what they would do.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can understand that. And so what do you think that the new leader is going to be good, or what are your viewpoints?
I know there's also some controversy with the new leader as well, but I know he was the better of the options. Yeah. So I think that hopefully there's going to be some change in Nigeria, but I also know that like with the past history of like the government and stuff like that, it's not guaranteed, and like there's still going to be problems either way.
Because it's hard to reverse like long period of habits, and history tends to repeat itself.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a good point. Do you feel that that like when you talked about corruption, like what kind of corruption is it? Just are multinational corporations also sometimes involved in the corruption, or like are they just kind of funneling money to the leaders, so the money just goes to those leaders? Or?
I think it's definitely just kind of funneling money to the leaders. Like since Nigeria is very underdeveloped and like money is really the main issue in Nigeria because prices are going up and then it's very expensive there, and like a lot of the citizens don't have enough money, and the government isn't really giving money into like helping the area. They're just taking money and collecting money from citizens all the time. So like it's really just a money problem.
Money problem, yeah. Just lacking the capital.
Yeah.
But there are still lots of natural resources in Nigeria, right?
Yeah.
And does Nigeria have a lot of oil? Is that something?
Nigeria, I think it is one of the major oil production countries.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, and what about like the tribal differences, like Igbo? Is it Igbo?
Yeah,
and
Igbo and Yoruba.
And Yoruba. What are there big tribal differences or?
Between Igbo and Yoruba people, there was actually there's a history between them where there's like differences because there was a war between the Igbo people and the Yoruba people. Now I don't know if there's that big of a conflict between them.
Oh, good.
But the area that I go to in Nigeria, usually it's a lot of Yoruba people. There's barely any Igbo people. I've never been to an area where there was Igbo people, so I haven't really seen like the interactions between them, between Yoruba and Igbo people. I just know that it really isn't like that big of a difference now. So yeah.
And are the Igbo in the north or the south, or is there a geographical like demarcation, or?
I'm not sure.
Not sure.
Yeah, not
okay.
Sure.
Okay. And what about oh shoot! I didn't. Okay, it stopped. What about life in America versus life in Nigeria? Can you comment on that a little?
Yeah, so life in America is definitely way advanced and way easier compared to life in Nigeria. Especially because I was born in America, so my body is accustomed to America. So whenever I go back to Nigeria, it's like kind of like a settlement issue sorts. Like, for example, like I can't drink the water in Nigeria unless it's bottled water. They have like water in bags that they usually drink from there, but I can't drink that because that water is not like clean enough for my body to handle. And so like there's definitely like a difference between living here compared to there, even like just with like the human body and stuff like that, and also with like the way of how easy accessible everything is here compared to in Nigeria. Like I said, we had to like get water from like a tank instead of just like turning on the faucet or stuff like that. So like it's definitely different, especially because here in America, like electricity and like technology is just such a big thing. And compared to Nigeria, like you would never know when like there would be electricity or when there wouldn't be electricity. Most of the times there was not electricity, and when the electricity came on, then you would have to hurry to charge your stuff and all that stuff, and then they would take it, and you wouldn't even know when they would take it. So yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And so you just never know when there's going to be like a blackout or something like that.
Nope.
Are
prepared.
like the Chinese investing in Nigeria, like in a lot of other parts of Africa, or are other countries like investing into Africa, like infrastructure? I mean Nigeria in general.
I'm actually not sure about the connection between Nigeria and other countries.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
You're not. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So, but do you feel like since you, because you've been going there ever since you were little, right? So do you feel like how has it changed over the time period?
I don't really think there has been much change
Oh,
since
okay.
when I was
That's
little to now. Like every time I come back, it always looks the same. Like,
okay.
There's really no big change.
Oh, so does that frustrate you a little sometimes?
That does frustrate me because, every time I go back, I do kind of expect to see something new. Like, I expect to see something where it's just like, oh, they changed this. Because especially, like, if you come here, you would notice that. Like, if you go on a vacation or you move somewhere and then you come back to a new neighborhood, you're going to be like, oh, they fixed the street or something like that. But in Nigeria, that's not the case. Like, in Nigeria, it's going to be the same. Yeah.
Okay. And what do you feel like about, like, in terms of America, like being in America and Nigerian culture and things like that? I know obviously you grew up here in America, so, but, how do you negotiate all those differences?
It's actually, I feel like it's quite hard for me, especially because when my dad first came to America with my mom, and when I was born, my dad wanted me to be Americanized. So he wouldn't let my mom teach me the Yoruba language. and he wouldn't even let her kind of feed me the foods because he wanted me to be American.
Isn't that
And
interesting?
so-
Like how that happens so quickly.
Yeah.
What do you think about that? I mean, like
I don't like that
Mhm.
because I don't like how there's a disconnect between the culture now for me.
Mhm.
I can't connect as well because like I still don't speak the language, and so
Mhm.
when every time I go back they see me as an American, they don't really see me as a Nigerian. And so it's kind of frustrating, especially because I want to share that culture with my children, and I'm not going to be able to the full extent because my parents didn't share it with me to the full extent.
Mhm. Do you think you can learn some of it though?
Yeah, I definitely understand a lot of it.
Mhm.
I just really can't speak it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess with like my wife's language, I can speak it, but the problem is sometimes the grammar is not perfect.
Mhm.
That's the biggest issue.
Yeah.
Like I understand everything, but then sometimes because I didn't go through all the years of schooling, my grammar isn't always correct,
Right.
and so that's like something. Yeah, but I can really understand how that like can be an obstacle sometimes, especially when people are having conversations and
Yeah.
you like want to join in on the
Exactly.
conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you how do you do is like in terms of globalization and things like that? Are there people moving into Nigeria from different African countries or different places, or Westerners also living, or how does that also exist in Nigeria as well?
I do believe so.
Mhm.
I remember there was this time where a lot of Ghanaians were coming into Nigeria,
Mhm.
and it actually created this saying, because whenever they would come into Nigeria, they would bring this certain bag,
Mhm.
and so Nigerians started calling the bags "Ghana must go" bags. And so I do think that some African countries do move to Nigeria, especially from Ghana.
And what about like the climate in Nigeria? What is the climate like? You said it's kind of like a lot of grassland. So
Yeah.
is it
It's also very dry. Nigeria is very dry, I would say.
okay?
It's dry, but they have rain seasons.
Mm.
So during the summer, like in July and stuff like that, it's raining all the time. Raining
okay.
straight every single day. It's raining, like it's a rainy season. But other than that, it's gonna be summertime.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So there's not. What about winter?
Really hot.
Like, or
There's no
winter at all?
The coldest I probably get would probably be like 70s.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Do you like that about it?
Yeah, I like that about it.
Mm.
Because like you don't have to worry about putting on a coat or stuff like that.
Right.
Like I never have to bring a coat or like a jacket to Nigeria.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah,
It's
that's
just kind of
interesting.
like either like coolish temperatures or like higher temperatures.
And can you describe like an interesting place that you visited in Nigeria, for example?
One of the interesting places that I visited in Nigeria was actually a Catholic church.
Mm.
So I've never been to a Catholic church before this.
Mm-hmm.
So it's one thing about Nigeria, like I said, is that they're really religion based. So
Mhm.
the churches there are gonna be like up to par. Like they're gonna look nice. They're gonna be designed nicely. They're gonna be like you can tell that there's actual money and planning put into building the church
Mm.
and stuff like that. So when you go into it, you'll see that it's like very modern. I would say like they have like the it looks kind of like American churches. Like if you
Okay.
go into a Nigerian church, a Nigerian Catholic church, it'll also look like an American church, and like they'll have like the high roofs and stuff like that. Like it's very advanced.
So the architecture looks really nice too.
Yeah.
I mean,
The
because you kind of
architecture is
think of like Catholic churches as sometimes
Yeah.
being a little more, I don't know, elaborate sometimes, and the architecture can be
Yeah.
prettier than the Protestant churches.
Exactly.
You know,
Yeah,
the Protestant
you could
churches are a
definitely see
little
that.
more basic sometimes. But how about like Islam too? Like in
The mosques are also very detailed, very architecturally advanced. Like they're
Mm.
big. There are a lot of big like domes and stuff like that at the top. Like yeah.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
And how about the Christians and the Muslims? Do they get along well in Nigeria? Or?
I do believe that the Christians and the Muslims get along well in Nigeria,
Mm-hmm.
especially because there's such like a interconnection with them.
Mm-hmm.
Like for example, in my family, my mom's side is Catholic,
Mm-hmm.
but my dad's side is Muslim. And so my dad actually, although like he grew up in a Muslim household, he was Christian, and his father had no problem with him like going to church and stuff like that.
Oh, okay.
And so like there, you'll often see a mix of both Catholic or Christian and Muslim religion in a family.
Oh, that's interesting. And what about like certain customs in Nigeria? Are there certain interesting customs that you would like to point out? Like some differences? Are there differences?
I wouldn't really say
Holidays that are different, or
they have their own specific holidays like Independence Day and like Children's Day and stuff like that. But I can't really name like a specific like, you know.
So what do you think are the differences between Nigerian culture and U.S. culture? That's a really interesting
there's a lot
question.
of differences between Nigerian culture and American culture. I feel like American culture is definitely more liberal and open, while Nigerian culture is very traditional and very strict. Like in Nigerian culture, you still have to, like, especially with like younger children and their elders, there's a very strict like respect culture. Like you always have to like, there's a certain greeting that you do when you see older adults and stuff like that. Anybody older than you in Nigeria, you always have to like, there's always some greeting that has to do with you getting down like to the floor, like either kneeling or something like that to greet them. And that's something that you would definitely not see here in America, especially because like in America everybody just treats everybody the same. It doesn't matter if you're older or you're younger, stuff like that.
That's true. That's true.
So there's definitely that difference between Nigerian culture and American culture. Like if you go to Nigeria, you definitely have to know how to greet somebody, or else you'd be seen as disrespectful or rude or something like that, or you wouldn't get like attention. So, yeah.
And so what do you think are the benefits of the respect for the elders, and what do you think are the disadvantages, or do you think there are
I feel like the benefits with the respect for the adults in Nigeria is that like it still has that respect value that you don't really see here in America, especially with like a lot of like younger teens and adults and stuff like that. Like you could see that like there's like a disconnect. Like it's the generations are getting more like insincere and more like they don't really care for anything. And like there's a lot of disrespect
here in the U.S.
Yes. That just wouldn't pass in Nigeria, and I feel like it's important. That respect is still important because like it means a lot. But I would say like the only disadvantage is that like I feel like with that respect value, sometimes like especially if like the person that is older than you is not a good person or is a bad person, they can kind of take advantage of that.
Yes.
Or especially like if they're in the wrong, you can't really tell them that because they're older and you have to respect them, which is like something that isn't really.
I saw that in China too when we were living there, because of the traditional society still kind of, even though they're more modern now, but they still have that kind of respect for elders and things like that. And what do you think about like in terms of living in America and dealing with all those differences, like while growing up, did you ever encounter any stereotypes or anything, or did you have to deal with any of that?
While growing up in America, I did encounter some stereotypes, I would say. Because I was Nigerian and stuff like that, and my parents are older, I wasn't really into like technology and all the cultural stuff of American culture that young of an age. So like I wouldn't really know like the music or like the sneakers or stuff like that. Like the American culture that you would see, I wasn't really into it until like I got like a little bit older. And so you could I definitely would get stereotyped because of that. Like they would know that I was like not from here, even though I was born here. They wouldn't consider me like from here. They would consider me like African, stuff like that. So yeah.
So you did encounter that sometimes.
Yeah.
What do you think about Americans' perceptions sometimes of of Africa?
I feel like
honest answer.
there's definitely a disconnect between African Americans and Africans. From both ways. I feel like African Americans show kind of like disrespect to Africans because like they'll make fun of their accents or mock them, or like they'll kind of like, it's kind of like they would bully you if you're African or stuff like that. But also like from the African sense, looking at African Americans, because of the stereotypes that are put on African Americans, they'll kind of also follow that. Like they'll also see African Americans and they'll think that they're thugs, or like they're gang affiliated or stuff like that if they see like certain things that African Americans would do. And so like there's kind of that disconnect between African Americans and Africans because of like the stereotypes that are generated. Yeah.
Do you think that American society has to do a lot of work in terms of like combating stereotypes?
I do feel like America has to do a lot of work in combating stereotypes, especially because like anything is easily passed down. And so like the stereotypes that are in America are being passed on to the next generation constantly. And like if we don't stop that, then it's just going to be bad overall, because like these are not things that should be spread around. Like there shouldn't be like younger kids who are also stereotyping other kids. That's not right. And that's something that you see a lot because it's something that's just around us. Like it's something that you hear, whether it's just kids hearing their parents talk about things about certain people, then they pick up that thing and they start saying that as well. And it just keeps on getting passed down, which isn't good.
Right. So do you think that critical thinking is important in terms of that, or education?
Yes.
Do you think like our educational system in the U.S. sometimes has failed? And
yes.
I feel like that too.
Yeah, I feel like our educational system in the U.S., it kind of just brushes past all of the stereotyping and like the issues that we have with like cultural indifferences. I feel like when it comes to the education system and like teaching history, it's mostly like teaching how America came to be and then teaching how slavery was a thing. And then like that's basically it. Like they don't really go into the cultural differences and stuff like that. They don't. It's mostly focused on white versus black. And it doesn't focus on like the difference, like the problems within the black community or the problems within the white community,
right?
Or other races,
even. So sometimes that's really
exactly
problematic. Yeah. And then do you feel like it? How do you feel like in terms of like the representation of different parts of the world and our media and our educational system? I feel like even within our book, for example, you don't see voices. I kind of feel conflicted about that from our book. I like our textbook, but for example, you don't see voices of, like, you're not reading voices of people who are from different countries.
Yeah, it's always just U.S. based. I feel like the U.S. is very, like, I would say conceited in that sort, because they don't really bring up anything of other countries, and I don't know if it's because, like, they're less privileged or what, but you don't really see a lot of, like, things with that, and you can see that with like students and like teens and people growing up as well, because like if you ask them about like geographics and stuff like that, they couldn't really tell you stuff. Like they couldn't really tell you like a bunch of other countries or stuff like that. I actually did this like test on like a bunch of people that I knew. I would ask them to like name like 5 African countries, and a lot of them couldn't even do that. So it shows that like they don't really have a sense of like everything outside of the U.S.
Definitely. So do you think that's a problem that needs to be resolved, especially with globalization?
I definitely think it's a problem that needs to be resolved, because without knowing what's happening outside of the U.S., when people come into the U.S., then there's going to still be that disconnect. You know what I mean? So like, I feel like if that disconnect isn't like changed, then like it makes people from the U.S. just like, I would say, not as aware and intelligent of like
about what's going on about
global issues and stuff like that. Especially because a lot of other countries know the U.S. Like the U.S. is a country that every other country would probably know of.
Right.
But us as the U.S., we don't know about every other country.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of really problematic because then we're like part of the global society, but our people don't understand other countries.
Exactly.
And then even understanding people who are from different backgrounds within our own country.
Yeah.
Like our liberal society talks about like tolerance and things like that.
Yeah.
But don't you think we need to try to understand other people as well so we can tolerate them?
Yes. I feel like we definitely need to understand other people, understand their cultural background, their views, and stuff like that, so there can be that connection and that interaction where we get to know each other and we get to see like our differences and our similarities.
Yes, definitely. And what do you think about like Africa as a whole, like Africa as a continent? Do you see like a Pan-African identity, or do you feel that the Pan-African identity is not? I know there's like an African Union and things like that. Is there a Pan-African identity or not in your viewpoint?
I feel like if you're in the U.S., there's a Pan-African identity.
Oh, okay, that's interesting.
But if you're in certain parts of Africa, then there isn't really a Pan-African identity. Because in the U.S., if you meet somebody, like you can bond over just being African. Like they don't have to be specifically Nigerian, in my case, to bond with them. But if you're in Africa, there isn't really that bonding because everybody there is African. So it's just like, well, I'm Nigerian, but you're from like Liberia or something. So there's that disconnect. But here, because we're so spread out and like everybody's like other different cultures, it's like, oh, we're just from the same continent. Like, oh, let's connect.
So that's interesting. So that kind of creates a Pan-African identity within the U.S.
Yeah.
And do you think that's kind of true with the Nigerian diaspora all around the world too, and the African diaspora?
Yes.
Interesting. Do you think that there's something unique to like West African countries versus other regions in Africa, or?
I feel like West African countries are definitely more known, I would say, in the U.S. compared to other regions. Like, especially with the younger kids and like first of all, Afrobeats is coming up in the U.S. as like a music genre, and so with it, I feel like that's bringing light to like these African countries, especially West African countries, because most of Afrobeats come from African countries, and so when younger generations and younger adults and teens are listening to this music, like usually they'll understand that, oh, like this is from Nigeria or this is from Ghana or something like that. So I feel like there's that recognition of West Africa because of that, because of Afrobeats here in the U.S. Other than like the other African countries, which is like Egypt and stuff like that, where you know because of like U.S. textbooks and stuff like that and pyramids and stuff like that. Yeah.
Have you traveled to any other parts of Africa outside of Nigeria or not?
The only other part of Africa that I've been to was Morocco, and that was because I was traveling to Nigeria, so it was like a layover.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So you didn't get a chance to spend a long time there?
I didn't.
Oh, okay. Did you hear some French, probably?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah, okay. Let me see. Are there different things that you would like to talk about? I'm trying to think of some questions right now. What about like the educational system? Can you comment on that? Maybe?
The educational system in Nigeria is definitely challenging. So for like higher institutions like colleges and stuff like that, it's very expensive. Like the only time that you really get to go there is if you're rich. Schooling is very expensive. I know that a lot of teens in Nigeria and younger adults try to get out of Nigeria, and they try to use education as their getaway. Like they try to say like they're trying to pursue like a degree or something like that in a school outside of Nigeria so that they can get out of Nigeria. That's how my dad got out of Nigeria, because he came to school in the U.S.
Oh, okay.
And I know that like because of the government, it can cause educational education to stop. For example, there was strikes going on in Nigeria, and so my cousin could not go to school for like a year because of those strikes that were going on. So there was no like school going on because of that. And so like I would definitely say like it's not like the U.S. Like school is not gonna happen every day and stuff like that. Like the government can literally just stop education in Nigeria, and it will just stop. So yeah.
Wow. So that's pretty difficult.
Yeah.
So when I think did you say that your dad's family is mostly here?
Yes.
And then your mom's family is still there?
Yes.
So why haven't your mom's family members tried to come to the U.S. or have they tried or they just didn't want to? Or?
So everybody's trying to come to the U.S. and Nigeria. So the way that my dad actually got out of Nigeria, because of education was very lucky of him, and from that he started bringing his other family members to America or like outside of Nigeria, and that's how kind of all of my dad's family got here. But for my mom's side, they didn't have that. They didn't have that one person who got out and was able to bring other people. So that caused that like it makes it harder for them. That's why a lot of them are still there. Especially because during the time when my dad started bringing all of his family over here, he told me that it was during like a lottery system where like if you won a lottery that you would got to get a visa to bring somebody here. But one of the people that he brought was my mom, and during that time she wasn't like developed in this country enough to start bringing her own family members as well. And so the only other person who's outside of Nigeria on my mom's side is my cousin, and she lives in the UK, and she got outside because she married her husband who's from the UK.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
And so does like do you try to help your mom's family sometimes back in Nigeria?
Yeah, that's a big thing that my mom does. She always, because she knows that money is an issue, she's always sending back money to them all the time. Like all the time she's sending back money just to help support them, because she knows that like she's very privileged here compared to them, and that she has certain advantages that they don't. And so she's always just trying to give back to them, especially because of where they are.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah. And
so when you go to Nigeria, do you often visit them?
Yeah. Mostly I visit them because I don't really get to see them. So I visit them a lot. I spend time with them and stuff like that. And usually like I'm bringing stuff back for them from my mom from in the U.S. and they're giving me stuff. You bring
like gifts and things like that?
And they give me stuff to give to my mom.
Oh, okay. That's nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so do when you go there, do like people who have never been to America, do they ask you a lot of questions about America?
They do kind of ask me a lot of questions, but also not really, because America is already portrayed to everybody.
So that's true.
So they kind of already have their own idea of what America is like.
Do you think sometimes that's a false image because it's like constructed by the media?
I feel like sometimes it is, but sometimes it's also very accurate.
Accurate because what exists in the media is also a reflection of our country.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, have anybody like has anybody like you've met like and made friends with in Nigeria, have they visited you here?
That I've met in Nigeria?
Yeah. No. Okay, that's interesting. And what about like the difficulties that your mom and your dad had when they came here? Did they experience some difficulties in terms of adapting to American life?
So for my dad, I know he did kind of experience some difficulties, especially because like he went through it with like getting accustomed to America, like getting a job and stuff like that. Like he would do security, taxi work, stuff like that. And there was that disconnect between Africans and African Americans that like he would often get into fights and stuff like that when he was younger and stuff like that, until he finally got more developed and more like stable in America. That's when my mom came, and so she didn't really have to experience any of that hardships because he was already stable. So like as soon as she came, they moved to another house, and then a year after that I was born.
Oh, okay. And you have like sisters or brothers?
Yeah, I'm
Oh
an
no.
only child.
Oh, okay.
Which is
That's
actually
interesting.
quite rare for Nigerian culture because in
Mhm.
Nigerian culture they often have a lot of children,
Mhm.
but I'm an only child.
Oh, okay. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Do you think that how do you think being an only child has also like shaped your vision of the world?
I feel like being an only child made things very different in comparison because I feel like if I was not an only child, if I had siblings, like younger siblings, or like if I had older siblings, there would be a difference in like the cultural aspect. Like I feel like my parents would have taught more. If I had an older sibling, they would have taught more of the culture because in Nigerian culture, it's often like siblings taking care of siblings.
Mm-hmm.
So like if I was an older sibling, I would be taking care of my younger sibling, or if I had an older sibling, they would be taking care of me.
Oh, okay. So there's that close relationship
Yeah.
that sometimes doesn't exist in American culture
Yeah.
as much. Do you feel that you feel kind of privileged in a sense to be able to travel to Nigeria and like to connect with that side of yourself?
I definitely feel like there is sort of a privilege
Mm-hmm.
because, especially because there's once a lot of Africans come to America, they often don't go back
Mm-hmm.
to their countries there. But because my dad is very involved in Nigeria. He's building a house in
Mhm.
Nigeria, and so he always goes back every single year to continue building that house and finish it up. And so I always get to go back with him while he does that, and I feel like it's definitely a privilege because I know a lot of Nigerians who have never gone to Nigeria, and it's actually quite interesting because it'll be younger Nigerians that know the language and stuff like that,
Mm-hmm.
and know the culture really well who have not been, but
Mhm.
me who doesn't know who doesn't know the language and
Mhm.
isn't really that connected as I want to be.
Mhm.
I often go back and like I get that privilege that a lot of people don't.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
And do you feel like is your dad kind of like because he can build a house in Nigeria and everything? Is that does that give him some kind of status a little? I mean, I don't know how to say that, but you know.
Yeah. When my dad goes back to Nigeria,
Mhm.
they can tell that he is from America
Mhm.
because he's been in America for so long. He sounds kind of American a little bit. He
Oh,
doesn't
okay.
sound as Nigerian as like being in Nigeria. And
Mhm.
so they definitely can tell that, especially because like when he's buying stuff, they'll raise the prices and stuff like that because they know that he's American.
Oh, that sounds
And
like in
so-
China too.
And so he'll have to like either send somebody to go and buy something for him or like really negotiate with them because
Right.
they know that he has that higher status than regular Nigerians.
Right. Is there bargaining in Nigerian culture then?
There is a lot of bargaining in Nigerian culture.
Oh,
There's
so
a
that's
lot of,
similar
like,
to Chinese culture?
Talking about prices, lowering prices,
Mhm.
and like a lot of Nigerians bring it to America as well. Like you'll see with like a lot of Nigerians, they'll be able to bargain their way in a price.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's something a lot of times Americans aren't able to do.
Yeah.
Do you, let me see what else I was gonna ask. Shoot, I just had like a question, but it just kind of slipped my mind, But okay, we did talk about education. What about like how did the pandemic affect? Okay, that's a good question. I think how did the pandemic affect Nigeria?
So in Nigeria for the pandemic, I know that they were wearing masks there too.
Mm-hmm.
But because of the less advanced technology that they have there, it wasn't as like strict as it is here in America. Like they had the pandemic, but people were still outside. People were still going around and stuff like that, and COVID is still happening. But I don't know anybody who passed away from COVID or like got really sick from COVID in Nigeria. But I know that they were wearing masks, but after a while they did stop. Like it wasn't as long as here in the U.S.
Okay, wearing masks and things like that.
And like that safety precautions.
Mm-hmm. Do you feel like other pandemics will start, or do you think like this is one of the only waves of the pandemic? I know this is a big question, hard to look into the future and say, but do you feel like I
say that another like, I wouldn't say it would be a pandemic of the sort, but I know another natural like occurrence is going to happen in the future.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if it would be a pandemic,
Mm-hmm.
but something is going to happen in the future, I would say, that will affect us globally as well.
Okay, how about the environment then? So that just
The
like
environment.
segues into that argument.
Yeah.
Are the people here also that Africa has a lot of natural resources and things like that? Do you think that those natural resources being protected? Is there enough being done to protect it? And do you feel like it's not just Nigeria's responsibility; it's also other countries or global society's responsibility to help Nigeria protect its resources?
I feel like Nigeria is protecting its resources at a low rate.
Oh.
That like the only time when the resources are really being used is like when they're like either bargaining with other countries to give them up.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that Nigeria's given up too many of its resources too easily to like Western countries or to other countries at a lower price or something? Or
no, I feel like it's at a decent rate.
okay.
Yeah, I feel like it's at a decent.
It's just the problem with the corruption then sometimes.
That's
Mm-hmm.
the problem.
Mm-hmm. And so what about, so you think that the environment is pretty much protected in a lot of ways?
Yeah.
Have you been to some of the natural areas like away from civilization in Nigeria?
Kind of, yes.
Mm-hmm.
One big thing about Nigeria is that like there's gonna be animals everywhere,
Mm-hmm.
especially like chickens.
Mm-hmm.
One thing that I have seen that's different is that back in the day in Nigeria there'd be goats
Mm-hmm.
everywhere. Like
Mm-hmm.
just goats just roaming around the street and stuff like that. Now there's not.
There's not?
No.
Um,
One thing that I noticed when I came back this summer was that there was no goats roaming around. So I don't know if that was like a thing where like they all like got eaten or something like that.
oh yeah, or they
Or,
put them
like-
on certain farms.
Yeah, or like the pandemic did something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But one thing is that you're definitely gonna see a lot of animals, whether you're in like an area that people are living in or whether you're in like the wild or something like that. There's gonna be lizards. There's gonna be chickens. There's going to be ducks.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's always gonna be some type of wildlife.
What kind of wildlife is there that's not here in the U.S.? Are there some things that you've seen like?
I don't think there's anything that I've seen in Nigeria that's not in the U.S.
Or is
I
that
would
more
just
like
say-
East Africa? I'm thinking of as more.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like all the animals that you'll see in Nigeria, you'll also see here. You just won't see it like just like outside. Like,
Uh-huh.
you'll have to go to a certain place to see those type of animals.
In Nigeria.
No, in
Here. But
in
there you
Nigeria,
would
they'll
see
just
it
be everywhere.
everywhere.
Like, in Nigeria, you'll just walk outside and you'll see a lizard on the ground. But here in America, you
Uh,
won't walk out and see a lizard on the
no,
ground. Like,
you
if
don't see
walk
that
out.
much,
Yeah,
yeah.
you wouldn't see that. But in Nigeria, you would. Or like you would see a chicken just walking
going around, yeah.
Yeah, but you wouldn't see that here in America. You don't see that like on a farm or like at a zoo or something like that.
Okay, and then let me see. Are there any other things that you would like to bring up? Like, do you have any other points that you want to bring up that we didn't touch upon?
The only thing I would say is that Nigeria definitely has a lot of developing to do
Mm-hmm.
with its government and like with its area. I feel like it's very different from America, and I feel like it's not bad that it's different. It's just that its differences cause things to be way harder for Nigerians.
Okay.
And like that living situation, I know that that's what they're accustomed to, so it may not be seen as that hard to them. But like if you come to America, you'll see that difference and you'll think like, oh, like kind of like feel sorry that like they have to go through a lot
All
of
of that,
difficulties and a
yeah.
lot of problems compared to how we have it so easily here.
Right. And do you think that like unequal development is something that like the world community needs to try to resolve?
Yeah,
for
I feel
this?
like there's definitely unequal development between
Mhm.
countries, especially third world countries compared to first world countries.
Mhm.
And like I feel like that is something that should be globally resolved because there should be no reason why like
Mhm.
we're so advanced compared to other people.
Right.
Like there shouldn't be that difference. Like
No.
we should all just have equal like privileges and equal like opportunities to have like the same kind of resources and stuff like that.
And do you also feel like Africa, maybe, I don't know, it's hard to say because Africa is so huge and they're all different countries, but like, let's say if like the African Union was more of a force, should it be able to have like veto power in the United Nations? Why do like certain countries only have so much power in the United Nations and others don't? It's like,
that's
seems
kind of
unfair.
weird. Yeah, that's unfair. Definitely unfair. I feel like if like Africa's Union would definitely have more veto power, especially because we're one of like a major continent.
Yes.
So like I would feel like we would have a lot of veto power.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then also, do you feel like how do you feel like Africa should handle its development? Do you think that African, like Nigerian, we'll speak about Nigeria because that's what you know, but like, do you think that Nigeria needs to become more self-reliant? Like, is African self-reliance really important, or is it simply just more like multinational or Western imperialism or Chinese imperialism or Russian imperialism or other countries just taking resources and then supporting some African leaders and like they're responsible, or is it the Africans themselves to some extent?
I feel like it's the Africans themselves to some extent, but I also feel like there's definitely like British like imperialism going on in Africa, especially Nigeria. Like I feel like there is some type of connection between them. I'm not sure what the connection is and how it affects Nigeria's self-dependency. I don't think
so you're saying like since Nigerian independence, there's still been a lot of dependence on its former I guess, what would you say, the former colonial power, Britain. Okay. Okay, well, this was a really interesting interview. I really enjoyed it. I'm sure you probably have class soon. So I will try to type up the transcript, and then eventually I will contact you about it, and you can add or you can do whatever you want. So